What if I told you that winning 100 games in baseball is actually a curse? That the teams with the best regular season records are somehow doomed to fail when it matters most? It sounds crazy, but the numbers don't lie. We're about to dive into 11 teams that dominated the regular season, broke records, and looked unstoppable. These weren't just good teams, they were historically great. Yet every single one of them found a way to choke when October arrived. From century-old heartbreaks to modern collapses, these stories prove that sometimes being too good is the worst thing that can happen to you. The 1906 Chicago Cubs. The 1906 Chicago Cubs won 116 games during the regular season, setting a record that would stand for nearly a century. This wasn't just a good team having a lucky year. The Cubs dominated every aspect of baseball that season in ways that made other teams look like they were playing a different sport entirely. Their pitching staff posted a team ERA of 1.75, which was nearly 50 points better than the second-best team in baseball. To put this into perspective, most teams were struggling to keep their ERA under 2.50, while the Cubs were making hitters look completely helpless. Mordecai Brown led this incredible pitching staff with a 26-6 record and a 1.04 ERA that seems almost impossible by today's standards. The Cubs' offense was equally impressive for the dead ball era. They hit .262 as a team when most clubs were barely reaching .240. Frank Chance hit .319 and provided consistent leadership, while Harry Steinfeld drove in 83 runs during a time when scoring runs was much harder than it is now. The dead ball era made offensive numbers much lower across the board, so these statistics were actually quite remarkable for 1906. The thing is, the Cubs looked completely unstoppable heading into October. They were facing their crosstown rivals, the Chicago White Sox, who couldn't have been more different. The White Sox were called the hitless wonders because they hit just .230 as a team and scored fewer runs than anyone else in the league. They were the worst offensive team in baseball, and everyone expected the Cubs to steamroll them in the World Series. The White Sox somehow managed to hit just .198 during the World Series, which sounds terrible until you realize the Cubs hit only .196. Chicago's other team won the series 4-2, despite being completely outclassed on paper. The Cubs' historic 116-win season became the first major example of regular season greatness, meaning absolutely nothing, when October arrived. This loss started what became known as the curse of the Billy Goat, which would haunt the Cubs for the next 108 years. The franchise wouldn't win another World Series until 2016, making this defeat the beginning of over a century of suffering for Cubs fans. Even more important for baseball history, the 116-win total became cursed. Any team that reaches this number seems doomed to fail in the playoffs, as if the baseball gods decided that being too dominant during the regular season guarantees disappointment when the games actually matter. The 1954 Cleveland Indians. The 1954 Cleveland Indians won 111 games during the regular season, posting a .721 winning percentage that wouldn't be matched for another 44 years. This wasn't just a team getting hot at the right time. The Indians built what might be the greatest pitching rotation ever assembled in baseball history. Bob Lemon and Early Wynn both tied for the MLB lead with 23 wins each, while Mike Garcia added 19 wins with an American League best 2.64 ERA. Bob Feller, despite being past his prime, still contributed 13 wins to give Cleveland 4 legitimate aces. The rotation's collective ERA was 2.78, and they threw 77 complete games during the season. To put this into perspective, most modern teams don't throw 77 complete games in 5 years combined. These pitchers weren't just winning games, they were dominating hitters for 9 innings at a time, every single start. The staff allowed fewer runs than any other team in the American League by a significant margin. Cleveland's offense matched their pitching dominance perfectly. Larry Doby led the American League with 32 home runs, while Bobby Avila won the batting title with a .341 average. The Indians hit 156 home runs as a team, which was massive for the 1950s when offensive numbers were much lower than today. They also finished second in the league in runs scored, making them the most complete team in baseball. The Indians finished 8 games ahead of the New York Yankees, who had won 5 straight World Series and still managed 103 wins themselves. Cleveland looked like the team that would finally end New York's dynasty and bring a championship to Ohio after decades of waiting. Every statistic pointed to the Indians being overwhelming favorites to win the World Series. Instead, they ran into Willie Mays and the New York Giants, who had barely squeezed out the National League pennant. The Giants had fought tooth and nail just to make the World Series, while Cleveland had cruised through the regular season. Mays made his famous over-the-shoulder catch in Game 1, robbing Vic Wertz of what should have been a 460-foot triple. That play seemed to shift the entire momentum of the series. The Giants swept Cleveland in 4 straight games, with most losses coming by just 1 or 2 runs. The thing is, 4 future Hall of Fame pitchers couldn't win a single World Series game despite dominating American League hitters for 6 months. Wynn, Lemon, Garcia, and Feller combined to go 0-4 in the World Series after going 78-31 during the regular season. The 111-win Indians became definitive proof that October baseball follows completely different rules than the regular season. The 1986 Red Sox. The 1986 Boston Red Sox had everything going for them during the regular season. Roger Clemens won both the Cy Young Award and American League MVP after going 24-4 with a 2.48 ERA. Wade Boggs hit .357 and reached base constantly, while Jim Rice drove in 110 runs and provided the power Boston needed. This was the team that Red Sox fans had been waiting decades to see, and they looked ready to finally break the curse of the Bambino. Boston took a commanding 3-2 series lead over the New York Mets heading into Game 6 at Shea Stadium. The Red Sox were just one win away from their first World Series championship since 1918. They led 5-3 in the bottom of the 10th inning and were literally 2 outs away from ending 68 years of heartbreak. Red Sox fans could almost taste the championship celebration. The collapse started with Gary Carter stepping into the batter's box with 2 outs. Boston was 1 strike away from winning it all when Carter singled to keep the Mets alive. The Red Sox were still in control, but the tension was building. Kevin Mitchell followed with another single, and then Ray Knight delivered a hit to tie the game at 5-5. Boston had gone from being 1 strike away to watching a 3-run lead disappear completely. The Red Sox still had a chance to escape the inning without damage. Mookie Wilson came to the plate and hit a slow grounder toward first base that should have been the 3rd out. The ball rolled directly toward Bill Buckner, who was playing first base despite having bad ankles that limited his mobility. This was supposed to be a routine ground ball to end the inning and send the game to the 11th inning. Buckner bent down to field the grounder, but the ball rolled right between his legs and into right field. Ray Knight scored from second base as the winning run, and the Mets won 6-5. Game 7 was still 2 days away, but everyone knew the momentum had completely shifted. The Mets won the deciding game 8-3, and Buckner became the face of Boston's continued failure. One error turned Buckner from a career .289 hitter with over 2,700 career hits into the symbol of Red Sox heartbreak. The ground ball rolling through his legs became the most famous mistake in World Series history. Buckner received death threats and had to move his family away from Boston. The thing is, he wasn't even supposed to be playing defense in that situation, but manager John McNamara left him in the game for sentimental reasons. The 1993-94 Montreal Expos. The 1994 Montreal Expos had the best record in all of baseball at 74-40 when the players went on strike on August 12th. They were on pace to win 106 games, which would have been one of the greatest seasons in franchise history. The Expos were operating with a much smaller payroll than most teams, but they had finally put together a roster that could compete with anyone in baseball. Pedro Martinez was just 22 years old and already showing signs of becoming one of the most dominant pitchers ever. He was striking out 8.8 batters per 9 innings, which ranked 4th in the National League. Ken Hill was the ace of the staff, leading the entire league with 16 wins against only 5 losses. The pitching staff posted a 3.56 team ERA, which was the best in all of Major League Baseball. They also led the league with 46 saves and issued only 288 walks, showing incredible control and precision. Larry Walker was having another excellent season, hitting .322 with 19 home runs and 86 RBIs. Moises Alou was having the best year of his career up to that point, batting .339 with 22 home runs and posting a .989 OPS. The Expos had finally developed both the pitching and hitting needed to make a serious championship run. Montreal led the National League East by 6 games over the Atlanta Braves, who were considered one of the best teams in baseball. The Expos looked like locks to make their first World Series appearance since moving to Montreal in 1969. They had built a championship-caliber team after years of being forced to trade away stars because of financial problems. The players' strike began on August 12th and completely destroyed the rest of the season. Commissioner Bud Selig made the decision to cancel the remainder of the regular season and the playoffs in September. The World Series was called off for the first time since 1904, which robbed the Expos of their best chance ever to win a championship. Montreal never recovered from losing that season. Financial problems continued to plague the franchise, and they were forced to trade Pedro Martinez and Larry Walker in the following years. The team that had been on pace for over 100 wins was broken apart piece by piece. The franchise collapsed over the next decade and eventually moved to Washington in 2005, where they became the Nationals. The strike didn't just cost the Expos 1 season. It killed the franchise's only real shot at glory and left Montreal without the World Series championship that seemed within their grasp. The 2001 Seattle Mariners. The 2001 Seattle Mariners tied the 1906 Cubs' cursed record by winning exactly 116 games during the regular season. This wasn't just a good team having a lucky year. The Mariners put together one of the most complete seasons in baseball history, and they did it without 2 of their biggest stars from previous years. Ichiro Suzuki won both Rookie of the Year and American League MVP while hitting .350 with 242 hits in his first MLB season. These numbers were incredible for any player, but especially amazing for someone who had never played Major League Baseball before. Ichiro's 242 hits set a new rookie record and showed that he could handle American pitching despite coming from Japan. Brett Boone had the best season of his career, hitting .331 with 37 home runs and 141 RBIs. His .950 OPS was nearly 300 points higher than his career average up to that point. Edgar Martinez and John Olerud provided veteran leadership and consistent production throughout the lineup. The Mariners generated an MLB record 50.4 wins, above replacement as a team, which showed just how dominant they were. Freddie Garcia went 18-6 with a 3.05 ERA, leading a pitching staff that kept Seattle competitive in every single game. The rotation was deep and reliable, while the bullpen provided consistent support all season long. The Mariners won 116 games despite losing Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson in previous years, which made their success even more impressive. Seattle cruised through the division series, beating Cleveland in 5 games to set up a showdown with the New York Yankees. The Yankees had won 3 of the previous 4 World Series and were looking to repeat as champions. They were experienced in October baseball and knew how to handle pressure situations. The American League Championship Series became a nightmare for Seattle. Ichiro hit just .222 with only 4 hits in 5 games against New York. The Yankees offense pounded Seattle pitching for 42 hits during the series, and the Mariners bullpen couldn't handle the pressure. New York won the series 4-1, ending Seattle's historic season. The Mariners haven't made the playoffs since 2001, turning their 116-win season into a 20-plus year curse. This extended playoff drought transformed their record-breaking achievement into a symbol of wasted opportunity. Seattle proved that matching the 1906 Cubs win total guarantees the same heartbreaking result. The 116-win curse struck again, showing that regular season dominance means nothing when October arrives. The 2003 Chicago Cubs. The 2003 Chicago Cubs were 5 outs away from their first World Series since 1945 in Game 6 of the NLCS at Wrigley Field. The atmosphere was electric, as Cubs fans could sense that decades of waiting were about to end. Sammy Sosa had hit 40 home runs during the regular season, while Moises Alou drove in 91 runs and Kerry Wood struck out 266 batters. The team had won 88 games and finally looked ready to break the Billy Goat curse that had haunted the franchise since 1945. The Cubs led the Florida Marlins 3-0 in the 8th inning, with Mark Prior on the mound. Prior had been dominant all season with a 2.43 ERA and 245 strikeouts in 211 innings. He was cruising through the Marlins lineup and looked completely in control. The Cubs needed just 5 more outs to reach their first World Series in 58 years, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. Luis Castillo came to the plate and hit a foul ball down the left field line toward the stands. Moises Alou was tracking the ball near the wall and appeared to have a chance to make the catch for what would have been the second out of the inning. The ball was heading directly toward the front row of seats along the foul line, where Cubs fans were reaching up to try and catch it. Steve Bartman, a 26-year-old Cubs fan wearing headphones, reached out and deflected the ball away from Alou's glove. The left fielder had been positioned to make the catch, but Bartman's interference prevented what might have been a crucial out. Alou immediately threw his glove down in frustration and began yelling at the fans in the stands. The crowd at Wrigley Field turned on Bartman instantly, booing him mercilessly and pointing him out to security. The Cubs completely fell apart after the interference call. Prior lost his command and began walking batters, while the defense made critical errors behind him. Alex Gonzalez, normally a reliable shortstop, booted a ground ball that should have been an inning-ending double play. The error kept the inning alive and allowed the Marlins to continue their rally. Florida scored 8 runs in that 8th inning, turning a 3-0 deficit into an 8-3 lead. The Marlins won Game 6 by that final score, then took Game 7 2 days later to reach the World Series instead of Chicago. One fan's split-second decision to reach for a foul ball became the trigger for the Cubs' most devastating collapse in decades, extending the Billy Goat curse for another 13 years. The 2004 Yankees. The 2004 New York Yankees became the first team in baseball history to lose a series after leading 3-0. No team had ever blown a 3-game lead in a 7-game series before, making what happened next completely unprecedented. The Yankees had built a dynasty over the previous decade and looked ready to add another championship to their collection. Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez, and Gary Sheffield led an offense that scored over 800 runs during the regular season. Rodriguez had joined the Yankees that year after his trade from Texas, giving New York arguably the most talented lineup in baseball. Sheffield hit .290 with 36 home runs, while Jeter provided his usual clutch hitting and leadership. The Yankees had won 101 games during the regular season and looked ready to win their 5th World Series in 9 years. The Yankees dominated the first 3 games of the ALCS against their bitter rivals, the Boston Red Sox. New York outscored Boston 19-8 through those opening games, making the Red Sox look completely overmatched. Game 1 was a 10-7 slugfest that the Yankees won behind strong hitting. Game 2 was a 3-1 victory that showed New York could win both high-scoring and low-scoring games. Game 3 was a 19-8 blowout at Fenway Park that seemed to crush Boston's spirit entirely. Mariano Rivera was still the most dominant closer in baseball, and the Red Sox looked like they had no answer for his cutter. Rivera had been virtually unhittable in previous postseasons and seemed ready to close out another series for the Yankees. Boston appeared demoralized and ready to go home for the winter after being thoroughly dominated. Then Dave Roberts stole second base in Game 4, and everything shifted for both franchises. Roberts entered as a pinch runner with the Yankees leading 4-3 in the ninth inning. His successful steal set up the tying run, and Boston won the game in 12 innings by a score of 6-4. The Red Sox then took Game 5 despite trailing 4-2 in the 8th inning, showing they wouldn't give up. Boston completed the impossible comeback with wins in Games 6 and 7 at Yankee Stadium. The final two games were played in front of stunned Yankees fans who watched their team make history for all the wrong reasons. Rivera blew saves in both Game 4 and Game 5, becoming mortal for the first time in his playoff career. The closer, who had been nearly perfect in October, suddenly couldn't get the crucial outs. The collapse allowed Boston to break the curse of the Bambino while creating a new curse for New York. The Yankees went from championship favorites to the answer to a trivia question about the biggest choke job in baseball history. The 2011 Texas Rangers. The 2011 Texas Rangers were one strike away from winning their first World Series twice in Game 6 against the St. Louis Cardinals. Josh Hamilton had hit 25 home runs during the regular season, while Nelson Cruz drove in 87 runs and Ian Kinsler provided steady production at second base. These players had powered Texas to 96 wins and their second straight American League pennant, putting the franchise closer to a championship than they had ever been before. The Rangers led the Cardinals 3-2 in the series, heading into Game 6 at Busch Stadium. Texas took a 7-5 lead into the bottom of the ninth inning and needed just 3 outs to clinch their first World Series title in franchise history. The Rangers were literally one strike away from the championship when everything started to fall apart. David Freese came to the plate with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. The Cardinals' third baseman was facing elimination along with his team, but he delivered a clutch triple to right center field that tied the game 7-7. Freese's hit erased the Rangers' 2-run lead and sent the game to extra innings when Texas should have been celebrating their first championship. The Rangers managed to score 2 runs in the top of the 10th inning to take a 9-7 lead. They were once again one strike away from winning it all, and this time they had an even bigger cushion with 2 runs instead of just 1. The thing is, being one strike away twice in the same game should have been enough to close out any World Series. Freese came up again in the bottom of the 10th inning and hit a 2-run double down the right field line. His second consecutive game-tying hit knotted the score at 9-9 and forced the game into the 11th inning. The Cardinals' third baseman had now tied the game twice in the final 3 innings, both times when Texas was one strike away from their first championship. The nightmare continued for Texas in the 11th inning when Freese hit a walk-off home run to center field. The Cardinals won Game 6 by a score of 10-9, completing one of the most dramatic comebacks in World Series history. St. Louis won Game 7 2 days later by a score of 6-2, finishing their remarkable comeback from being down 3-2 in the series. Freese drove in 21 runs during the playoffs and became the World Series MVP for his heroic performance. Texas went from being one strike away twice to watching their championship dreams die in one night. The 2017 Los Angeles Dodgers. The 2017 Los Angeles Dodgers lost the World Series to the Houston Astros in 7 games, but they were actually the victims of the biggest cheating scandal in modern baseball history. Clayton Kershaw had bounced back from previous playoff struggles to post a 2.31 ERA during the regular season. Corey Seager hit 22 home runs and drove in 77 runs, while Justin Turner provided consistent production with a .322 batting average. This team won 104 games during the regular season and looked ready to bring Los Angeles its first championship since 1988. The Dodgers pushed the series to the limit despite Houston's illegal sign-stealing operation that was happening throughout the World Series. The Astros were banging on trash cans in their dugout tunnel to signal what pitches were coming to their hitters. This gave Houston batters a massive advantage because they knew whether a fastball or breaking ball was coming before the pitch was even thrown. Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, and Alex Bregman all knew what was coming during their at-bats, yet they still needed 7 games to beat the Dodgers. The thing is, even with this unfair advantage, Houston couldn't put Los Angeles away quickly. Game 5 went 13 innings and became one of the longest World Series games ever played, lasting over 5 hours. Both teams battled back and forth for 13 innings before the Dodgers finally won 3-1. Los Angeles actually out at Houston 243-204 for the entire series, despite the cheating disadvantage. The Dodgers had more hits, more runs, and better overall offensive numbers than the team that was stealing signs. The Dodgers pitching staff posted a 3.33 ERA for the series, which should have been good enough to win most World Series. Kershaw allowed just 3 earned runs in 13 innings across 2 starts. When the sign-stealing scandal finally broke, in 2019, it put a permanent asterisk on Houston's championship. The revelations came from former Astros pitcher Mike Freese, who admitted that the team had been cheating throughout their championship season. MLB investigated and found extensive evidence of the illegal operation, including video footage and testimony from multiple players. The 2017 title will always be tainted because of the systematic cheating that gave Houston an unfair advantage. The Dodgers were robbed of a legitimate chance to win their first World Series in nearly 30 years. They pushed a cheating team to 7 games while playing fair themselves, which makes their loss even more frustrating. The scandal transformed what looked like a great World Series into evidence that even cheaters sometimes need extra help to win. The 2019 Houston Astros. The 2019 Houston Astros were caught cheating, but still reached the World Series legitimately that season. The team finished with a franchise-best 107-55 record during the regular season, which was their 3rd consecutive season with over 100 wins. This level of sustained success showed that the Astros had genuine talent beyond their illegal sign-stealing operation from previous years. Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, and George Springer tried to prove they could win without stealing signs during the 2019 playoffs. Bregman had posted an MLB-leading 8.9 WR during the regular season along with 41 home runs, while Yordan Alvarez won AL Rookie of the Year. The pitching staff was equally impressive, with Justin Verlander winning the AL Cy Young Award after going 21-6 with a 2.58 ERA. Garrett Cole finished second in Cy Young voting with a 20-5 record and a league-leading 2.50 ERA. Houston won 107 games during the regular season and beat Tampa Bay and New York in the playoffs to reach the World Series. The Astros had home field advantage and looked ready to win their 2nd championship in 3 years. They were facing the Washington Nationals, who had never won a World Series in franchise history and seemed like underdogs despite their strong season. The Astros took a 2-0 lead in the series by winning both games at home with strong pitching performances. Houston looked completely in control and appeared ready to close out the series quickly. The thing is, they had the more experienced roster and were playing in front of their home crowd for the first 2 games. Then the series shifted to Washington, and everything fell apart for the cheaters. The Nationals won games 3, 4, and 5 at home to take a 3-2 lead in the series. This put Houston on the brink of elimination despite their early advantage. The Nationals became the first team to win a World Series without winning at home, as they won all 4 road games during the series. Anthony Rendon and Juan Soto led Washington's offense with clutch hits throughout the series, while Steven Strasburg dominated on the mound with his pitching performances. The Nationals returned to Houston for games 6 and 7 and completed their historic comeback by winning Game 7 on the road. The Astros lost despite having home field advantage and a more experienced roster that should have closed out the series. Baseball delivered perfect karma by letting the cheaters reach the World Series, then crushing their dreams when it mattered most. The sport allowed them one final chance to prove their legitimacy, but their ultimate failure provided satisfying justice for fans who believed their previous success was built on deceit. The early 2010s Nationals. The Washington Nationals spent the early 2000s building a super team that couldn't win in October, despite having all the talent in the world. Bryce Harper was hitting 42 home runs and winning MVP awards, while Max Scherzer threw no-hitters and won CY Young awards. Steven Strasburg had one of the best fastball-curveball combinations in baseball and looked like a future Hall of Famer. These weren't just good players having decent seasons. They were elite talents in their prime years, and the Nationals kept surrounding them with more talent every season. The Nationals won 95 games in 2012, 96 games in 2014, 95 games in 2014-2016, and 97 games in 2017. Each of these seasons ended the exact same way, with Washington losing in the division series to teams that weren't nearly as talented on paper. The pattern was always the same: dominate for 162 games, then collapse in the first round of the playoffs when the games actually mattered. The 2012 Division Series loss to St. Louis was especially painful because the Nationals led 6-0 in the deciding game before falling apart. The 2016 loss to the Dodgers went the full 5 games, with Strasburg and Scherzer unable to close out the series at home. The 2017 defeat against the Cubs saw the Nationals blow multiple leads and waste another incredible regular season. The team seemed cursed to waste Hall of Fame careers and never reach their potential when October arrived. Harper was hitting .330 with 34 home runs during the regular season, then struggling to get key hits in playoff games. Scherzer was striking out 300 batters during the summer, then giving up big hits in elimination games. The thing is, these players were performing at elite levels for 6 months, but they couldn't carry that success into the playoffs. Harper left for Philadelphia in 2019, and most people thought Washington's championship window had closed completely. The Nationals started the season 19-31 and looked like they would miss the playoffs entirely for the first time in years. Juan Soto and Anthony Rendon carried the team to a wild card spot with a late-season surge that nobody saw coming. Washington finally broke through by winning every single elimination game they faced during the 2019 playoffs. They never lost at home during October, going 7-0 at Nationals Park throughout the postseason. The team that had collapsed in previous years suddenly couldn't lose when facing elimination. They proved that sometimes you have to do everything wrong before you can do everything right. These 11 teams prove that winning 100 games during the regular season is actually baseball's biggest curse. The 1906 Cubs, 1954 Indians, and 2001 Mariners all dominated for 6 months, then failed when it mattered most. October baseball follows completely different rules than the regular season. The sport's most heartbreaking moments define franchises more than championships ever could. Bill Buckner is remembered for one ground ball, not 2,700 career hits. Steve Bartman changed Cubs history with one-hand movement. These failures stick with fans longer than any regular season success. October turns Hall of Famers into little leaguers and makes 162 games meaningless if you can't win 11 more when the games actually count. If you like this video, like and subscribe for 1,000 years of luck.